Straight on to our big spotlight for this evening. The Supreme Court has lost its patience with Vijay Mallya. Today, the Apex Court directed beleaguered liquor baron Vijay Mallya to disclose all the overseas assets that he holds, not just what he holds, but also that are held by his immediate family to the banks. Meanwhile, Vijay Mallya's lawyers have given the Supreme Court clarity over his plans to return to India. They say he will not, adding that his return in the current circumstances is simply meaningless. Ashmit Kumar joins us now with the details. Ashmit, clearly it was a very important development in the court today. Take us through what happened. What were the key arguments that were made by Vijay Mallya's lawyers?
Indeed, Vijay Mallya's position seeking exemption from disclosing his assets as an NRI, not managing to cut much ice with the bankers. The bankers making their position very clear. They believe essentially two aspects here. They believe that one, that Vijay Mallya is not complying with the Supreme Court orders. Now, they believe are not convinced by the argument of non-disclosure of assets. The bankers have argued by way of their affidavit that for any meaningful settlement, for any meaningful negotiations, it's crucial that the bankers are in the know of assets over which Vijay Mallya exercises control, are in the know of his repaying capacity, and only then can there be any meaningful negotiations and talks between the two sides, and that's in fact the stance that the bankers have taken. They've also gone on to add that it appears from the conduct of Vijay Mallya that he's obfuscating facts, that he's suppressing information, and that he cannot claim exemptions as an NRI after having siphoning off the money. Furthermore, the bankers add that they believe that they're completely within their rights for invoking personal guarantees issued by Vijay Mallya, and that they have their eyes set on all assets as well as that lie anywhere in the world. In fact, they also have their eye on the $75 million payout by Diageo. So at this point, bankers keeping their options open, which brings us to the second part on the question of when Vijay Mallya is coming back. Well, towards that end, the bankers have alleged that this entire issue of revocation of passports is being used by Vijay Mallya as a ruse for avoiding facing the Apex Court. They have, in fact, the bankers on affidavit have said that there are provisions available for Vijay Mallya to approach the Indian High Commission, travel on temporary documents for emergency travel, to approach the Apex Court, to come before the banks in person, and to work out a solution which they believe is the only legitimate way forward in terms of resolving this entire issue. So that's the bankers' position, not blinking. Vijay Mallya has certainly made his position. The Supreme Court will take note of this tomorrow when it resumes hearing in this case at 2 p.m.
Absolutely, Ashman. Thank you so very much for joining us with those details. And now joining us to take the story forward is Mr. Majid Memon, MP and senior advocate. Thank you very much, Mr. Memon, for joining us here on The Big Picture. So it's an interesting development today in the court, sir, because what Vijay Mallya is pretty much saying that he's not going to return to India because the current environment is simply not conducive for it. So in a sense, is he saying bye-bye to India? And what are the options that India has in order to extradite him from the United Kingdom?
Well, to extradite him is not an easy job. It would consume a lot of time. It would also be uncertain. It would be quite expensive. And on all counts, I think it would not be wise to initiate extradition proceedings against him. Even at this stage, as we are talking right at this moment, some offer has been sent by Mr. Mallya to the creditors here that, well, he has enhanced the earlier offer by a couple of thousand rupees. And I think, some arrangement whereby the monies could be recovered would be to the advantage of those who deserve this money, and more particularly a large number of employees who have been deprived of their legitimate salaries for the work done for several months. Now, in a case like this...
saying, therefore... Right, sir. So, I mean, if I were to understand you, sir, you're still essentially saying that considering how painfully slow an extradition process may be, and not just slow, but also expensive, there might be some merit then for the banks to accept the offer that Vijay Mallya has made.
Yeah, I think the offer should have been, to my mind, the offer was fairly reasonable and appeared to be bona fide. But then if the banks are stubborn, that they would say that we would not even forego the last rupee as far as accrual of interest is concerned, and therefore the debt has multiplied 2 times or 3 times, well, I think that would be high-handedness and it would not serve the cause of justice. Because, see, if you are seeking his extradition, you will have to wait for still quite a long time. Because, see, in London, in Bow Street Court, which is a court assigned extradition matters, in City of London, where initially the proceedings would be heard. Even that hearing might take quite a few, weeks or months. And thereafter, if decision is against Vijay Mallya, he has sufficient resources to challenge that. And he would challenge it in the High Court of London, the Queen's Court, where the matter goes thereafter. And even thereafter, there's another third layer of House of Lords. So why do we, unnecessarily invite this kind of lingering litigation when all that we want is not his blood? All that we want, we would not be satisfied by keeping him confined in prison. A businessman who has so many resources even outside India, why do you want to witch hunt the person and humiliate him? We want money, and if he is, so long as he is willing to pay money, I think
to come into some sort of negotiation.
It should not be proper
It
to
should not.
coercive methods.
How do you make of this argument, Mr. Memon? Because in the court today, the lawyers of Mr. Vijay Mallya said that the assets that his family owns, considering the fact that his family members are NRIs, should not be revealed because they were really not part of the personal guarantee that Vijay Mallya had made with the banks. Do you see, sir, any merit in that argument?
Well, true, because we have been told, we are not very sure, but subject to verification of the actual facts, we are told that his family members are US citizens, or they are no more Indian citizens. And if the wealth is acquired outside this country by a non-Indian national, then I think that should be out of the subject matter which could be used for the purpose of recovery of money. Another important aspect is that this man, being member of parliament, definitely at the time of becoming member of parliament, he was required under the law to give a detail of his assets, and including the assets of his wife, of his spouse. So therefore, I think that must be very much in the records of the Rajya Sabha, unless he has lied there or he has suppressed certain facts about or made an untrue statement then.
Right. They're very important points you're making there, Mr. Memon. Also, banks now feel that perhaps because his passport has been revoked by the Indian government, that is being used as an excuse by Vijay Mallya not to return to India. Just tell us, sir, in terms of, for the understanding of our viewers, in such a situation, can he still travel to India, showing some other documents?
No, certainly. See, the revocation of his passport has stranded him at a particular place. Now, this has not only prevented him from returning to India, but it has also blocked him or rendered him immobile at the place where he is, and he cannot travel to any other country as such also. So all over the world, his movement has been completely restricted, and he is stranded in London, where he happens to be, as far as our knowledge goes. But then, if he has to come to India, there are a number of ways by which he can come. He can make an application to Supreme Court that, well, if he is coming in order to sort out the matter or make payment or even face charges, then I think there should be extension of assistance for his travel, and that is not difficult. Through the Indian High Commission, a temporary passport can be given to him, which has happened in the past in several other cases, and he can very well travel on that passport from along with visa from London to Mumbai and surrender. There is no difficulty on that count at all.
Mr. Memon, before we wrap this up, I have one final question for you then. Do you feel somewhere his legal strategy also from day one may have erred? Because, this attitude of defiance has clearly irked not just the bankers, but even the Supreme Court now. And we've seen in the past, even in the case of Subrata Roy, who was, when he was being summoned to the Supreme Court, he was not coming and sort of presenting himself. And then now he's been languishing in jail for 2 years. So purely, do you think somewhere the legal strategy that his lawyers have adopted has also, sort of erred?
Hello?
Mr. Memon, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Mr. Memon, can you hear me?
I can hear you
All
now.
right. Has the legal strategy that Vijay Mallya and his lawyers employed in this case, have they erred in that? Because this attitude of defiance has clearly now irked the Supreme Court. So right from day one, sir, do you think that, they got it wrong?
No, I don't agree with this proposition that their legal strategy was erroneous. Because, see, most important is your life and your liberty. You see, after that, your money and everything else comes. So your life and your liberty, if it is in peril, if it is endangered by, you see, the happenings around you, and you feel that you would simply be pushed into prison, and then there will be no way to get out of it and get all kinds of embarrassment and humiliation in custody, then in that context, I think the strategy seems to be right. That he has prevented himself from being arrested, although under some excuse he fled to London from Mumbai before he could be stopped at the airport, or before any non-available warrant could have been served on him. So in that view of the matter, I think the strategy has been fairly successful from his point of view.
Thank you very much, Mr. Majid Mehmood, for joining us here on The Big Picture. Important comments coming in there saying that the extradition process is simply not easy, and perhaps the bankers may be well advised to take the offer that Vijay Mallya has put on the table.